Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Furniture Fix. I'm Raina, and this week I've got a couple of nightstands for you. Yes, they're super basic nightstands, but when I'm done with these, they're going to look super high quality, high end pieces that anyone's going to love having in their bedroom or living room, even as side tables. So, why don't you come with me so I can get these fixed? Okay, let's talk about these basic nightstands for a minute. They were $40, found them on Facebook Marketplace. I usually wouldn't pay that much for something that's not even real wood, but I haven't worked on a project like this. I usually work on pretty damaged pieces that need a lot of work, so I was kind of excited that this was going to be a little bit easier project than I'm used to. I'm thinking I'm going to change the base, maybe some legs, and then definitely some pops of color in the drawer or in the backing. But before any of that can happen, I've got to get these cleaned. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to remove this backer board. It's literally just a piece of cardboard. I wouldn't even call it a backer board, but it's kind of warped. On the other nightstand, it's even worse. So I'm going to go ahead and replace it with an actual backer board. It's going to be a little bit thicker, not too much, but it's really going to make it to where I can make this really sturdy once all the nails get put back on there. And I plan to line the front with the same liner that I'm going to be using on the drawers. So I need that surface to be super straight and something good that the liner will adhere to so I don't have any problems down the road. Or really, I should say, whoever ends up taking these pieces home, they don't have any problems down the road because I really strive for quality when I'm working on pieces, not just like a wham bam, sell it and I'm done, never having to think about it again. I want people to actually be able to enjoy these pieces for a really long time. So that stuff matters to me anyway. And so I'm going to go ahead and take all these off and then I'll be able to show you what the piece is actually made of. And that way you can see how I can tell that this is just a sticker on top. And I need to be really careful when I sand this so I don't create more problems for myself. I'm just going to create a scuff surface so that my primer will stick and then my paint will stick. So let's get this taken out. So here you can see that it's just particle board and then it's a sticker. There's not even any veneer. So like I was saying before, I'm just gonna have to make sure I'm really gentle with the sanding. I just wanna create some tooth so that the primer and then the paint grabs on and that doesn't scratch off. So that's the next step. I'm using a 220 grit sandpaper to scuff sand, and I'm trying really hard not to go too deep so that I don't ruin the sticker. But in doing so, you'll see later on, especially when I put my primer on, that I actually didn't go deep enough. I was just being way too careful and I should have went deeper, and you'll see why a little later. This Craig jig comes in handy whenever you're measuring for the drawer pulls or knobs. It did take me a little bit to get the measurements just right, but once they were, drilling the holes was super easy. Getting the initial lineup to where you want it was the hardest part. I'm just used to measuring with the tape measure. Okay, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit, and instead of going and measuring the second drawer all over, I just clamped the two drawers back to back, and they're super even on all sides. I made sure of that. And then I'm just gonna drill down into the other drawer because I'm not the greatest at using the drawer tool, and this just seemed like a fast alternative, so I'm gonna try it. Whoops. What is happening? All right. All the holes are nice and level. Using the jig isn't that hard. I just hate having to measure like 1,000 times because I'm paranoid. These will be the boards that are going to be the backer to each nightstand. And these are a nice thickness to where it's going to help make those nightstands even more sturdier. For some reason, I chose to use a foam brush to apply my primer, which I almost never do. And especially with this sticker, it was not adhering very well. I am most definitely going to need a second coat on this because I can tell the coverage is not great. This is where you can tell that the adhesion is not there with the primer, and all I can think of is it's due to me not sanding deep enough to create that tooth so that that primer will stick to it. You can see here how much primer sanding's taken off, and even though it is normal for the sanding process to take off some, this is new to me. I've never seen it this bad. So of course I have to go in and do a second coat of primer, which I do normally do anyway, but you can see the difference in using the foam brush or pad versus this foam roller and the brush that I'm using. The other thing I was thinking about is that I don't remember rinsing off my pieces when I was done cleaning them with the simple green. Now, you've got to rinse anytime you use a degreaser for the most part. It's always good to rinse that off. So I'm wondering if I didn't clean that off enough. So maybe that's part of the adhesion problem. I just need to make sure my primer holds and doesn't compromise my paint. I've had enough of primer talk, so switching gears, I'm adding some of this contact paper to the backer board so you'll be able to see it from the front. It's going to add just a little bit of pop and interest when you're looking down into it. I've said it once and I'll say it all the time. The hardest part about doing this is taking this backer off of it. This looked like it came off easy, but you got to remember I am speeding this up and some of the stuff was edited out, but it took me quite a while to get this straight. And you can see that I'm going to use a different technique on the second one that worked so much better, which is to just start at one little corner and just take my time and peel the backing off as I go. This seems to be the best way on a flat surface. Doesn't always work great on drawers, but in this case it did work out much easier than that first one I did. These legs were originally this silver color, but after ordering 4 different sets of brushed gold, I couldn't find one that went with the drawer pull gold, so I'm using my favorite gold spray here, and it's almost like a perfect match. I didn't film the first coat for some reason, but ultimately I ended up with 4 coats of this color. I'm almost ready to paint these, but first I need to give it a quick little sanding with a high grit, just to get any dust nibs that might have settled on the primer. I'll be using my favorite paint, the Heirloom Traditions, in the color Iron Gate. It's a very deep black. Shout out to my pour spout. I love this thing. Keeps everything nice and clean, and it doesn't gum up the lid, the inner ring, so that it's super hard to take your lid off. I love this thing. So if you don't have one, get one, guys. I always like to test my sprayer out to make sure it's spraying just the way I want it. In my experience, to get the best coverage, you should do a 50% overlap. No matter what coat you're on, this is just going to give you the best coverage. Most likely you're going to need 2 to 3 coats, sometimes even 4. It all depends on the paint you're using, the paint sprayer, the brush even, or roller, and also the temperature. It's super important, especially when you're spraying. That's going to determine how the paint lays down, how many coats you're going to need, and what the texture or the smoothness ends up being in the end. Top coat time with my favorite top coat, the General Finishes High Performance in Satin. I just love a nice satin finish. You'll notice I'm just misting them ever so gently, and that's because the top coat is thinner than using paint, and you want to prevent drips by just doing some light coats. And the more coats you have, the better your paint will be protected. I'm going in with a high grit sandpaper just to slough off any dust nibs that might have landed. And it's also going to give the top coat a nice bed to rest on. And that's going to help it stick or adhere a lot better. And that's super important to me right now, especially with those adhesion issues I was having with the primer. Time to top coat the pieces. What I like to do is add a little bit of my paint to my top coat so that I don't get any haziness on the pieces. And then what I did a little earlier was I put some of the paint in a little pot for the customer so they can have it at home in case they need to do touch-ups. Customers love this little detail. Sometimes I put my pieces up a little higher so that I can get to the lower portions without straining my back. What happened here is I actually got a little clog on the nozzle on the tip. So it's just like a little hard piece that creates a little shell over the opening. And because it's hot here in Arizona, it tends to happen quite a bit. So I just forgot to take that off. So now I do the same as when I'm painting. I just do the 50% overlap. And I'm just doing some really light misty strokes so that I don't cause any drips to happen. And it's better to do multiple layers, as many as you can do, because that's going to create that insurance that your paint underneath all this top coat will last for a really long time. I'm using a brown paper bag to sand because it's just like using a very high grit. I just want to make sure I don't have any dust particles or anything stuck on there before my last top coat. So I noticed I have a little bit of an issue here. There's a bit of crackling and also like a seam line of where there was an overage of paint. You can see the line there. So I need to go in and just get this taken care of by just sanding it down so it's as smooth as I can get it. And once I'm happy with it, I'll repaint this part. Now that I'm happy with this fix, I will finish sanding the rest of the piece and do my final top coat. You'll notice I am working inside the garage, so I had to put up some sheets to protect some of the stuff around me. It is pretty hot and windy outside, so there's no way I am chancing my last top coat and having to do more work. So I've got my PPE on and I will crack the garage door when I'm all done. Okay, the time has come to put the contact paper in the drawers and the hardware on, my favorite part, because that's when you really start to see the pieces come to life. And although the inside of these drawers look just fine, I like to punch it up with a little bit of color or a little bit of design paper in there. So I chose this gold and black paper. It's got some cute motifs. You'll see it more when I'm applying it. And then for the hardware, I chose a long bar, and I think it's gonna look super good with the lines of this set. So let's get these put on. So here is the hardest part of this whole project by far. It's taking the paper off this sticky back. But once I've got that done, I will get it where I want it and smooth it all out. I'll cut the extra side pieces off with an X-Acto knife, and then I'll move on to putting the hardware on. I need to take these bases off of the bottom so that I can add my new legs. This one was giving me a bit of trouble, but it turns out that there was a screw there that I didn't see before, and I caught on by the second one. I'll go around and mark all the holes and then screw them all on one by one. Even though no one's gonna see these, I decided to get some gilding wax and paint the silver screws gold. Pro tip, make sure you pre-nail that so that you can have something to hang this backer board on if you're doing it upright, or else it's gonna be a nightmare trying to line it up by yourself. Sure, I could get some clamps, but I really didn't want to damage my paint job. Then I just go all around one by one until all of them are nailed in. I am really happy with the way the cubbies turned out. It's such a neat little surprise in there. It's time to flip my workstation and get it into backdrop mode. I'll be taking my nightstand's pictures right in front of there. I'll put down a rug, as you'll see in just a moment. And guys, if you like what you're watching and want to see more, please give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already, because I've got some really great flips on my channel and there's so much more to come. Let's take a quick look back at where we started with these nightstands. They were pretty basic, kind of scratched up, but I think I did a good job turning these basic nightstands into a couple of beauties. Thank you all for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed this transformation. Don't forget to check out some of my past videos and some of my future ones too. I'll see you next time on The Furniture Fix.